You made it to the tiny 16th century Museum of Art. Anyway, great to have you here. Today, I will be giving you a tour of 10 different artworks, hence why it's tiny. But there's nothing tiny about these artworks. You'll see. The exhibit will show how Northern 16th century art compares to art also from the 16th century in Italy. You'll have an opportunity to view the artwork while I speak about it. If you want to read what I've just said, it'll be on a slide after the artwork, so feel free to pause the video and read the slide. Now let's talk about the distinctive features of the 16th century as it related to the historical developments of the period. The 16th century brought about a transformation in Europe. New ideas were beginning to spread, such as concepts of the natural world and the shape of the earth. The printing press allowed for these ideas to spread, and as travel became more normalized, artists built an international art community. The church continued its traditions and demanded taxation in order to continue to build the lavish St. Peter's known as the Vatican. Tired of taxation, a new movement, the Reformation, began, especially in the North. They became the Protestants, and of course, the church formed what was called the Counter-Reformation. The people of Venice lived in a very different setting than the people of Florence and Rome. They were surrounded by water, not walls, and it was a big trading seaport. People from different cultures gathered here. They adopted new styles and played by their own rules. So due to their differences, they saw themselves as superior to Florence and Rome. The idealized style that had been introduced in the 15th century was further developed in Venice. Venetians were the first to paint oil on canvas, which in addition to being more durable in a city like Venice that was surrounded by water, was a medium that allowed light to reflect in a way that fresco on plaster could not. A new style of painting developed, which allowed the paintings to stand for what they were, art, rather than symbols of the church. In addition, artists created smaller art, which was called easel art, big enough for it to fit into an easel. The art became portable, able to be put into wealthy merchants' homes, and thus appreciated by art lovers called connoisseurs. Now let's take a look at the art I've selected for you today. One of the most celebrated images from the 16th century is a ceiling that Michelangelo painted as a commission of Pope Julius II. Although Michelangelo's preferred form of art was sculpture. Besides the stunning beauty and idealism, what's important to me is the fact that this work was commissioned by the church and has religious themes. The fresco is a stunning painting that shows the kind of art Michelangelo was capable of. The figures are not only idealistic in beauty and elegance, but it conveys movement and the majestic quality this scene deserves. One thing I wonder was about women. Were there a few who got to express their artistry? The answer is yes. Plautia Nelli was one of those women. I learned that at the age of 14, Plautia, who had been born to an affluent family, was sent to a convent, as it was cheaper than providing a dowry for her marriage. And I'm guessing that although convents are known for their strict rules, it was likely less risky venture, depending on the available potential marriage options. This is a painting by Plautia Nelli, The Last Supper. As is the case with many women painters, they were taught by their fathers, who were painters in their own right. I find that this version of The Last Supper is not only beautiful, but it showcases Nelli's talent. These two images, what they have in common is that they project an idealized beauty and form. They're both religious by Italian painters and are both large. But the Protestant movement had begun in the 16th century. Pope's taxation demands were not seen kindly, and artists had to adapt to survive. This next image is one that I think begins to show the mark of that revolution. Titian's Venus of Urbino is a nude that is different from all the nudes that Michelangelo painted. This woman's sensual, and although the name Venus would place her to be inspired by classical figures, this is a statement that shows the beauty of the human body. She's also idealized. Her feet are small and her torso is long. She's not teaching a lesson about virtue. She emits a very soft, beautiful body. Titian used oil paint and a technique called glazing, which meant that he layered the paint to achieve the richness of the color. The reclining nude from form continues to be imitated today. Similar, but from the north this time, is our next image. Nymph of the Spring by Lucas Cranach the Elder is a similar nude to Titian's, but nature has taken a step forward. The rich greenery that surrounds this woman is almost surreal, with an almost impossible horizon line above her body and leaves that seem to lack any uncomfortable prickliness that is present in the real outdoors. So this body is not idealized in the same way Venus is. If you were to make the head size approximately the same and overlay them, you can see Urbino's body is at least 1.5 feet longer than the nymph. Although one is Italian and the other Northern, what these two images have in common is the fact that the nude is now a form that's being painted without the shame that we see in Michelangelo's Sistine paintings, or it is not surrounded by excessive symbolism. While both of them do contain some symbolisms, they are now art for art's sakes. What is extraordinary is that now these paintings are being commissioned by wealthy people. The art is now termed easel art, which can easily be taken to its destination and no longer has to be on a wall or a ceiling. Our next image is Giorgione's The Tempest. This is another example of an easel painting, but here the world literally takes center stage. There's a figure on the right, nude, but partly covered by a bush and a draping over her shoulders. She's nursing a baby. A soldier gravely observes, this is not something a church would have commissioned, but a piece of art the artist imagined. I read in one of the texts that I was researching that part of the Counter-Reformation dialogue was the condemnation of art as a means of expression, which was born of the artist and not created to serve God. In contrast to the previous image, The Rest on the Flight to Egypt by Gerard David from the Netherlands shows us the natural world in the background. But what we see front and center is the image of the Virgin Mary, and therefore it is more religious in nature. It has a traditional pyramidal shape, which in itself is a symbol, and only a single breast is showing. In the background, we see the Mary and the baby on the donkey with Joseph following. What these two have in common is that both images seem somewhat similar in the use of color and both are equal size, but obviously that's different is the focus on the subject matter. This next image is what I think is a brilliant self-portrait. Albrecht Dürer, though he was German, where Martin Luther was leading the reformists, he posed himself in a full frontal portrait mode, which we have mostly seen in the paintings of Christ. Dürer was a humanist. He put what he learned in the sciences and put them to work in his art. Though he made his money by selling prints, his paintings reflected the northern attention to detail. We can see that in the carefully crafted image of his hands, his face, and even the way the light hits each individual strand of hair. The next image is a portrait by another talented, albeit less well-known artist, Katharina van Hemessen. I first discovered Katharina von Hemessen in our textbook with her self-portrait, which perhaps imitates Dürer's down to the inscription on the top of the canvas in the rich, dark colors. But her talent did not end there. The daughter of a painter, Van Hemessen painted for the court of Mary of Hungary, and as such, she was able to travel. Here, the portrait I selected is a tribute to Hemessen. The self-portrait was painted in 1548 at the age of 20, but this portrait shows her development, and because it was done much later. What these images have in common is that they're both from the north and both present attention to detail. This last pairing allows us to see the talent of one more woman, Fede Galizia. Fede was the daughter of an artist. This painting is one of many versions of this theme, all of them skillfully carried out. What makes this one special is the fact that at the time, women were not really painting such subject matter. Fede Galizia became known for her still life, and in fact, much of the way the still life is painted today is attributed to her style. Our final piece is by Peter Bruegel, Dutch Proverbs. I found this to be important as a piece to close the exhibit with because it brings a little comedic take into our daily lives. There are no gods as we see with Michelangelo, or central figures or sequences as we see in Egypt, or nudes that are idealized, or even a landscape that shows the natural world like the Tempest. What we do see here is what is something that is as far from idealist or humanist or plastic or Reformation, Counter-Reformation, nudes, or even portraits. This comes from the artist's mind and pokes fun at our vulnerable selves. And what could be better? I hope you have enjoyed your mini museum tour. Thank you.